Marcus Chen had always been the kind of person who talked to machines, not because he expected them to talk back, but because it felt right, polite. His grandmother used to say that politeness was a habit that should extend to everything in life, even things that couldn't appreciate it. The mining station on Kepler 442b was not a place most people would call home. But Marcus had been there for 5 years now. The red dirt planet orbited a distant star, and the human colony existed purely to extract rare minerals from the planet's crust. It was honest work, dangerous work, and lonely work. Most miners rotated out after 2 years, but Marcus had stayed. He liked the quiet. He liked the routine. He liked watching the sunrise paint the strange purple sky in shades of orange and gold. Every morning at exactly 6:30, Marcus walked the same path from the residential pods to the mining facility. The path wound around a small hill covered in crystalline formations that caught the morning light like scattered diamonds, and every morning he passed the drone. The drone sat in a small crater about 20 meters off the main path. It was clearly not human technology. The thing was roughly spherical, about the size of a small car, with a surface that seemed to shift between metallic gray and deep blue depending on the angle of the light. Strange symbols covered its surface in patterns that hurt to look at for too long. 6 thin arms extended from its core, each ending in what looked like sophisticated sensors or tools. Marcus had first noticed it 3 years ago during his morning walk. At the time, he'd reported it to the colony administrator, a perpetually stressed woman named Director Walsh. She'd sent a team to investigate, but their scans showed the drone was completely inactive. No power signature, no response to any attempts at communication, no signs of recent activity. The metal showed signs of extreme age, as if it had been sitting in that crater for centuries or longer. Probably some ancient alien junk, Walsh had declared. Leave it alone and get back to work. But Marcus couldn't just leave it alone. Something about the drone fascinated him. Maybe it was the way its surface seemed to shimmer, even when inactive. Maybe it was the precision of its construction, so different from human engineering yet somehow elegant. Or maybe it was simply that Marcus had always been curious about things that didn't belong. The first time he waved at it, he felt silly. He was walking past on his way to work, and on impulse, he raised his hand in a small greeting. Just a simple wave, like he might give to a neighbor. The drone, of course, didn't respond. It sat there, as it always did, silent and still. But the next morning, he waved again. And the morning after that, it became part of his routine. Wake up at 5:45, quick shower and coffee. Walk to work by 6:30. Wave at the drone. Start the mining shift at 7. His coworkers thought he was eccentric, but miners tended to develop odd habits. The isolation and repetitive nature of the work did things to people's minds. Some collected rocks, some wrote long letters to family they rarely saw, some built elaborate model cities in their spare time. Marcus waved at an alien drone. As far as mining quirks went, it was relatively harmless. Dr. Sarah Kim, the colony's xenoarchaeologist, was more interested in Marcus's daily ritual than his coworkers were. Sarah had arrived on Kepler 442b 6 months ago as part of a research team studying the few alien artifacts that had been discovered on various human colonies. The drone was by far the most sophisticated piece of alien technology found in this sector of space. You know, she told Marcus one evening in the communal dining area, that drone is probably older than human civilization. The metal composition is unlike anything we've seen. It contains elements that don't exist naturally anywhere in this solar system. Marcus looked up from his meal of reconstituted protein and synthetic vegetables. You think it came from somewhere else? Had to. The question is, why it's here, and why it's been inactive for so long. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes bright with scientific curiosity. What I find interesting is that you're the only person who acknowledges it every day. Everyone else just walks past like it's part of the landscape. It's not part of the landscape, Marcus said simply. It's something someone built, someone intelligent. Just because they're not around anymore doesn't mean their creation doesn't deserve basic courtesy. Sarah smiled at that. It was a very human response, she thought. Most species they'd encountered in their limited exploration of space seemed to view technology purely in terms of function and utility. The idea of showing politeness to an inactive machine was quintessentially human. "Have you ever noticed any changes in it?" she asked. "Any response to your daily greetings?" Marcus shook his head. "Nothing obvious. But," he paused, trying to put a feeling into words, "sometimes I get the impression that it's listening." "I know that sounds crazy." "Not as crazy as you might think," Sarah replied. "Just because our instruments can't detect activity doesn't mean there isn't any. Alien technology might operate on principles we don't understand yet." That conversation stuck with Marcus as the months passed. He began paying closer attention during his morning walks, looking for any sign that the drone might be more than just an ancient relic. He noticed small things that might have been coincidence. The way the symbols on its surface seemed slightly brighter some mornings, the way the thin arms occasionally seemed to be positioned differently than the day before. Though the changes were so subtle he couldn't be sure. Winter on Kepler 442b was harsh. The temperature dropped below freezing, and violent storms swept across the mining site regularly. During the worst weather, the outdoor work was suspended, and the colonists stayed inside the reinforced habitation modules. But even on those days, Marcus made an effort to check on the drone through the observation windows. He couldn't wave from inside, but he looked for it through the swirling snow and dust. It was during one of these winter storms that Marcus first saw something that couldn't be explained away as coincidence or imagination. He was standing at the observation window in the main corridor, watching the storm rage outside. Visibility was almost zero, but occasionally the wind would clear the air enough to see short distances. During one of these brief clearings, he saw the drone. One of its arms was extended upward, as if pointing toward the habitation modules, as if pointing toward the window where Marcus stood. The storm closed in again before he could get a clear second look, and by the next morning, the arm was back in its normal position. Marcus told himself it must have been moved by the wind, though the arms had never seemed affected by weather before. Still, he couldn't shake the image of that extended arm, reaching toward the human settlement like a greeting returned. Spring brought new challenges to the mining operation. A series of seismic events had destabilized some of the deeper tunnels, and the work became more dangerous. Marcus found himself working longer hours and coming home exhausted, but he never missed his morning wave, even when he was running late or feeling tired. It was Dr. Kim who first suggested that Marcus's routine might be more significant than anyone realized. She had been conducting detailed scans of the drone, using equipment far more sophisticated than the colony's standard instruments. Her findings were puzzling. "The drone's internal structure is incredibly complex," she explained to Marcus and Director Walsh during a briefing. "There are systems within systems, layers of technology that seem to serve different purposes. Some components appear to be sensors capable of detecting electromagnetic fields, thermal signatures, and even quantum fluctuations. Others look like data storage systems with capacity beyond anything we can build. But it's inactive," Walsh pointed out. "Your own scans confirmed that." "That's what's strange," Sarah continued. "The power systems appear to be offline, but there are trace energy readings that suggest some components might be in a kind of standby mode, like a computer that's asleep but not completely shut down." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the recycled air in the meeting room. "You think it's been watching?" "I think it's been waiting," Sarah replied. "The question is, waiting for what?" That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about the conversation. If the drone was somehow aware, if it had been observing the human colony all this time, what did it think of them? What did it think of him and his daily greetings? The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. The next morning, as he walked his familiar path, Marcus found himself more nervous than usual. He approached the crater where the drone sat, noting that the morning light made its surface seem more blue than gray today. The symbols across its hull seemed to form patterns that were almost familiar, like a language on the edge of understanding. He stopped at his usual spot and raised his hand in his customary wave. But this time, he spoke aloud. "Good morning," he said, feeling foolish but determined. "I hope you're doing well today." The drone, as always, gave no visible response. But as Marcus continued his walk to work, he could have sworn he felt something watching him go. Not the passive observation of a security camera, but the focused attention of a conscious mind. Over the following weeks, Marcus began talking to the drone during his morning visits. Nothing elaborate, just simple greetings and comments about the weather or his plans for the day. The kind of small talk he might make with a neighbor. He told no one about this development, not even Dr. Kim. It felt too personal, too strange to share, but his conversations didn't go unnoticed. The colony's external security cameras occasionally picked up Marcus, standing near the drone, apparently talking to himself. When Director Walsh reviewed the footage, she was concerned enough to call Marcus into her office. "Marcus, I need to ask if you're feeling all right," she said, her voice gentle but professional. "The isolation out here can affect people in unexpected ways. If you're experiencing any stress or psychological pressure, we have resources to help." Marcus assured her that he was fine, that talking to the drone was just a harmless quirk that helped him start his day positively. Walsh seemed satisfied with his explanation, but she made a note to have the colony doctor keep an eye on him. Dr. Kim's reaction was different when she learned about Marcus's conversations. Rather than concern, she showed excitement. "This could be exactly what we needed," she told him privately. "If the drone is in some kind of standby mode, consistent interaction might be what triggers a response. In human technology, some systems require user input before they fully activate. You think I should keep talking to it?" "I think you should do whatever feels natural," Sarah replied. "But yes, I'd like you to continue. And I'd like to monitor the drone more closely while you do." So Marcus continued his morning routine, now with the knowledge that his actions might have scientific significance. But despite the added pressure, his conversations with the drone remained genuine. He found himself looking forward to these quiet moments before the noise and activity of the mining day began. 3 months into what Sarah privately called the communication experiment, something changed. Marcus was telling the drone about a letter he'd received from his sister back on Earth, sharing news about her new baby, when he noticed movement in his peripheral vision. One of the drone's sensor arms had shifted slightly, tilting in his direction. Marcus stopped talking mid-sentence and stared at the arm. It remained in its new position for several seconds, before slowly returning to its previous angle. The movement was subtle, controlled, and completely deliberate. For the first time in 3 years of daily visits, the drone had responded to him. Marcus finished his conversation in a state of excitement and nervousness, thanking the drone for listening and promising to return the next morning. As he walked away, he felt the weight of that attention again, stronger than ever. Whatever intelligence resided within that ancient alien construction, it was no longer dormant. It was waking up. That evening, Marcus called Dr. Kim to report what he'd seen. Sarah immediately accessed the monitoring equipment she'd placed around the drone site, but the subtle movement had been too small for the sensors to detect clearly. However, her instruments had recorded a brief spike in electromagnetic activity at the exact time Marcus described the arm movement. "Something is definitely happening," she told him. The energy signature was tiny, but it was there. After 3 years of complete silence, that drone generated a measurable response to your presence. Marcus went to bed that night with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Tomorrow morning's walk would be different. After 3 years of one-sided conversation, he was finally about to discover whether he'd been talking to himself or to something that had been listening all along. As he drifted off to sleep, Marcus wondered what the drone might be thinking about humanity, based on their limited interaction. What conclusions had it drawn from 3 years of observing a single human who chose to greet it politely each morning? What did his simple courtesy represent to an intelligence that might be older than human civilization itself? He would begin to find out tomorrow. The next morning arrived with unusual weather. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and the wind carried an electric charge that made the hair on Marcus's arms stand up. The atmospheric sensors predicted a major storm system moving in from the east, the kind that could shut down mining operations for days. Marcus approached the drone with more anticipation than he'd felt in years. As he crested the small hill that led to the crater, he could see the drone's silhouette against the stormy sky. But something was different. 3 of the sensor arms were extended in different directions, like antennae searching for signals. "Good morning," Marcus said, his voice slightly hoarse with nervousness. "Looks like we're in for quite a storm today." As he spoke, one of the extended arms slowly rotated toward him. The movement was smooth and deliberate, unmistakably intentional. Marcus felt his heart rate increase as he realized he was witnessing the first clear sign of alien intelligence humanity had encountered. "You can hear me," he said, more statement than question. The arm dipped once in what could have been a nod. Marcus stood there for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what was happening. After decades of searching for signs of intelligent life in the universe, first contact was occurring on a mining planet, between a maintenance worker and an ancient drone that had been considered dead technology. "I've been talking to you for 3 years," Marcus continued. "Have you been listening the whole time?" Again, the subtle dip that resembled a nod. "Why now? Why are you responding now?" This time, the drone's response was more complex. 2 arms moved in coordination, pointing first at Marcus, then at the approaching storm clouds, then back at Marcus. The gesture was unclear, but it seemed urgent. The first drops of rain began to fall as Marcus tried to understand what the drone was trying to communicate. The storm was moving in faster than predicted, and he needed to get to the shelter of the mining facility. But leaving now felt wrong, like walking away from the most important conversation in human history. "I have to go," he told the drone. "But I'll come back tomorrow. Will you wait for me?" The arm that had been pointing at him swept in a wide arc that encompassed the crater, the mining facility, and the sky above. Then it settled back into a neutral position. Marcus interpreted the gesture as a promise. As he hurried toward the mining complex, Marcus pulled out his communicator and called Dr. Kim. "Sarah, you need to get out here with your equipment. It's responding. The drone is actively communicating." "In this weather?" "Marcus, there's a level 4 storm warning in effect." "That's just it," Marcus replied, dodging chunks of debris blown by increasingly violent winds. "I think the storm might be connected somehow. The drone seemed to be warning me about something." By the time Marcus reached the safety of the mining facility, the storm had intensified beyond anything in the colony's weather records. Winds exceeded 200 kilometers per hour, and the electrical activity was so severe that it knocked out several communication arrays. The miners huddled in the reinforced central chamber, listening to the howling wind and waiting for the storm to pass. Director Walsh established contact with the orbital station to report their status, but the communication was full of static and kept cutting out. During one of the brief, clear moments, they received disturbing news. "Kepler Base, this is Orbital Station 7, came the crackling voice. "We're detecting massive energy anomalies across your hemisphere. Something is interfering with our sensors, and we're reading impossible atmospheric disturbances. Are you experiencing anything unusual down there?" Walsh looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of her people. "Define unusual, Orbital. We're in the middle of the worst storm in colony history." "That's not a storm, Kepler Base. Our meteorological satellites show clear skies across your entire continent. What you're experiencing shouldn't be possible." The communication cut out entirely after that, leaving the colonists in confused silence. If it wasn't a natural storm, what were they experiencing? "Doctor." Kim found Marcus in the chaos and pulled him aside. "I managed to get some readings before the weather monitoring systems failed," she whispered. "The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. This isn't a weather phenomenon at all." "Then what is it?" "I think it's a scanning process. Something incredibly powerful is examining our planet, and the atmospheric disturbances are a side effect." Marcus felt a chill of understanding. The drone was trying to warn me. It knew this was coming. "Which means it knows what's causing it," Sarah concluded. "Marcus, I think your morning conversations may have triggered something much bigger than we realized." The storm raged for 18 hours before suddenly stopping. The transition from chaos to calm was so abrupt that it felt unnatural. One moment the wind was tearing at the facility's walls, and the next there was perfect stillness. The colonists emerged cautiously, expecting to find their equipment destroyed and their mining operation in ruins. Instead, they found something impossible. The landscape around the mining facility had been subtly altered. New crystalline formations dotted the terrain, each one perfectly geometric and glowing with a faint internal light. More striking still, A series of metallic structures had appeared overnight, arranged in a complex pattern that stretched for several kilometers. But the most shocking discovery was the drone. What had once been a single inactive sphere was now clearly part of a much larger construction. Additional components had emerged from beneath the planet's surface, connecting to the original drone with graceful arcs of unknown metal. The complete structure towered nearly 50 meters into the sky, its surface alive with shifting patterns of light. "My God," Dr. Kim breathed as they surveyed the transformed landscape. It wasn't a drone at all. It was just the tip of something enormous. Director Walsh immediately declared a colony-wide emergency and established a security perimeter around the new structures. But when Marcus asked if he could approach the central construction, she surprised him by agreeing. "If this thing has been dormant for thousands of years and chose to activate now, your daily conversations might be the key to understanding it," she said. "But you're not going alone." A small team accompanied Marcus as he walked the familiar path toward what had once been a simple crater. Dr. Kim carried an array of scanning equipment, while two security officers flanked them with weapons ready. Marcus felt the absurdity of the situation, bringing guns to a conversation with a technology that could reshape landscapes overnight. As they approached the towering alien structure, Marcus noticed that the original spherical section had lowered itself to approximately its former height. Despite all the changes, there was still a place where he could stand and talk to the intelligence within, just as he had every morning for 3 years. "Good morning," he said, feeling that normal courtesies were more important than ever in this extraordinary situation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The entire structure hummed with energy, and patterns of light raced across its surface in waves. But more than that, Marcus felt something in his mind. Not words exactly, but concepts and emotions that weren't his own. Gratitude, recognition, and something that might have been loneliness. "It's telepathic," Dr. Kim whispered, her instruments detecting massive electromagnetic activity centered on Marcus's brain. "It's trying to communicate directly." Marcus closed his eyes and concentrated on the alien presence in his thoughts. Slowly, the chaotic flow of concepts began to organize into something resembling communication. The intelligence identified itself as a guardian, one of many ancient constructs placed throughout the galaxy by a civilization that had vanished eons ago. Its purpose was to monitor developing worlds and catalog the emergence of intelligent species. Most races, it observed, were cataloged and forgotten. But occasionally, a species demonstrated qualities that marked them as worthy of special attention. "What qualities?" Marcus asked aloud, knowing that Dr. Kim was recording everything. The answer came as a flood of memories and observations spanning 3 years. The Guardian had indeed been aware from Marcus's first wave. Studying him as he studied it, it had watched him maintain his routine through difficult weather, personal struggles, and the isolation of life on a frontier world. It had observed his courtesy towards something that couldn't respond, his consistency in maintaining a meaningless daily ritual, his decision to treat an alien object with the same respect he would show a neighbor. But more than Marcus's individual behavior, the Guardian had been monitoring the entire human colony. It had watched how the humans dealt with the dangers of mining, how they supported each other during difficult times, how they maintained their humanity despite being light years from Earth. It had observed their curiosity about alien artifacts, their restraint in not attempting to dismantle or exploit the dormant technology they discovered. Most significantly, it had watched Director Walsh's decision to leave the drone undisturbed after determining it was inactive, despite the potential scientific and economic value it might have represented. "We passed some kind of test," Marcus realized. The affirmative response came with undertones of approval and something like pride. But the communication also carried urgency. The Guardian's awakening had been detected by the network of similar constructs throughout the galaxy. Soon, representatives of the Guardian civilization would arrive to make formal contact with humanity. This was both an incredible opportunity and a tremendous danger. The Guardian's creators had been benevolent, but other ancient civilizations had left different kinds of monitors. Some were neutral observers. Others were designed to eliminate species that failed to meet certain criteria. Humanity's actions over the next few months would determine which kind of attention they received from the galaxy's older inhabitants. "What do we need to do?" Marcus asked. The answer came not as words but as images and concepts that took several minutes to process. Humanity needed to demonstrate unity, wisdom, and peaceful intent. They needed to show that their expansion into space was motivated by curiosity and growth, rather than conquest and exploitation. Most importantly, they needed to prove that the qualities the Guardian had observed in the small mining colony were representative of the species as a whole. The communication session left Marcus exhausted but exhilarated. As the team returned to the mining facility, Dr. Kim's readings confirmed what they had all experienced: genuine contact with an ancient alien intelligence that had been benevolently observing human development. Director Walsh immediately sent reports to Earth and the other human colonies, though the Guardian warned that their communications were likely being monitored by other alien intelligences. Within days, representatives from Earth's government and the Colonial Council were en route to Kepler 442b. But the most important preparation happened in the quiet moments before dawn, when Marcus continued his daily conversations with the Guardian. The ancient intelligence shared stories of civilizations it had observed over millions of years, species that had transcended their origins to become forces for good in the galaxy, and others that had destroyed themselves or been destroyed by more advanced races that judged them unworthy. "What made the difference?" Marcus asked during one of these sessions. The Guardian's response was complex, involving concepts that human language struggled to express. But at its core, the answer was surprisingly simple. The successful species were those that maintained their compassion as they gained power, that remembered to be kind even when kindness served no obvious purpose, that treated the unknown with curiosity rather than fear. "Like waving at a broken machine every morning for 3 years, Marcus said. The agreement that flowed back to him was warm with something that might have been affection. In all the Guardian's eons of observation, it had rarely encountered such a simple yet profound example of conscious kindness. Marcus's daily greetings hadn't just demonstrated human courtesy, they had proved that humans were capable of maintaining their humanity even in the vast loneliness of space. As word spread throughout human space about the contact on Kepler 442b, Marcus found himself at the center of the most important diplomatic event in human history. But he continued to wake up each morning at 5:45, have his coffee, and walk the familiar path to greet his alien friend. The routine that had started as a simple courtesy had become the foundation for humanity's future among the stars. And in the early morning hours, as the strange sun of Kepler 442b painted the alien landscape in familiar colors, Marcus and the Guardian prepared for whatever was coming next. The ships arrived 3 weeks later. They appeared without warning in Kepler 442b's orbital space, 7 massive constructs that defied easy description. Each was roughly the size of a small city, but their architecture was so alien that human eyes struggled to process their geometry. Some sections seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, while others phased in and out of visibility as if occupying multiple realities simultaneously. The colonial defense grid, designed to handle pirates and asteroid threats, was laughably inadequate against technology this advanced. Director Walsh received terse communications from the Earth fleet rushing toward their system. But even the most optimistic estimates put their arrival at 6 weeks away. Humanity would face this first formal contact alone, with nothing but their words and their hopes to represent their species. Marcus stood beside the Guardian construct in the early morning light, watching the alien ships through the telescopic displays Dr. Kim had set up. The ships had made no hostile moves, but their very presence was overwhelming. Each one represented a civilization older and more advanced than humanity could imagine. "Are they here to judge us?" he asked the Guardian. The response came with undertones of ancient sadness. The ships represented what the Guardian called the Convergence, a gathering of the galaxy's oldest surviving species. When a new race reached the threshold of interstellar civilization, the Convergence convened to determine whether they would be allowed to continue their expansion or whether they represented a threat that needed to be contained. The process had been repeated thousands of times over millions of years. Some species were welcomed into the galactic community. Others were quarantined to their home systems until they demonstrated greater wisdom. The unlucky ones, those who showed themselves to be irredeemably aggressive or destructive, were quietly eliminated. "What determines the outcome?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The Guardian's communication carried the weight of eons. The convergence examined three criteria: a species' treatment of their own environment and each other, their response to encountering alien intelligence, and most critically, their capacity for growth beyond their base instincts. Humanity's environmental record was mixed at best. Their response to alien contact had so far been cautious, but peaceful. But their capacity for growth would be tested in the coming days through direct interaction with the convergence representatives. Dr. Kim approached with her latest sensor readings. "Marcus, they're scanning everything. Our technology, our biological signatures, our electromagnetic emissions. It's like they're trying to understand every aspect of human civilization in a matter of hours." Marcus nodded grimly. Through his connection with the Guardian, he could sense the intensity of the alien scrutiny. Billions of data points were being analyzed. Compared to the profiles of thousands of other species the convergence had evaluated over the millennia, the first formal communication from the alien ships came at noon. It arrived not as radio signals or laser transmissions, but as direct neural impressions received simultaneously by every human on the planet. The sensation was overwhelming, like having thoughts placed directly into their minds by an intelligence so vast that human consciousness could barely contain even a fraction of its attention. The message was simple and terrifying. Representatives of the human species will present themselves for evaluation. One individual will speak for your kind. Choose wisely. Director Walsh called an emergency meeting of the colony's leadership. The question of who should represent humanity in this unprecedented situation sparked heated debate. Walsh herself was the ranking colonial official. Dr. Kim had the most experience with alien technology. The security chief argued that military protocol demanded he be the representative. But as the discussion continued, it became clear that there was only one logical choice. "It has to be Marcus," Dr. Kim said finally. The Guardian specifically chose to reveal itself to him. After 3 years of daily contact, he's the closest thing we have to an alien diplomat. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. The fate of human civilization might depend on his ability to convince ancient alien intelligences that his species deserved a place among the stars. That evening, as Marcus prepared for what might be the most important conversation in human history, the Guardian shared one final piece of crucial information. The convergence operated on principles that went beyond logic or negotiation. They evaluated species based on their essential nature, the fundamental qualities that drove their behavior when no one was watching, and nothing was at stake. "Like waving at a silent machine every morning," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. The Guardian's response carried approval, and something like hope. Marcus's daily greetings hadn't been about the drone at all. They had been about the choice to maintain courtesy and humanity in the vast emptiness of space, when it would have been easier to simply walk past and ignore what he didn't understand. The next morning, Marcus walked his familiar path one last time as a simple mining engineer. Representatives from the 7 alien ships had descended to the planet's surface during the night, establishing a meeting area precisely between the Guardian construct and the human colony. The symbolism was clear: the Guardian had arranged for humanity to be heard, but the decision belonged to others. As Marcus approached the meeting site, he saw them waiting. 7 beings that challenged every assumption about what alien intelligence might look like. One resembled a collection of crystalline formations that sang with harmonic tones. Another was a shifting mass of energy contained within geometric patterns of light. A third appeared to be made of liquid metal that flowed through impossible shapes. But despite their alien nature, Marcus sensed something familiar in their presence: the weight of age, the burden of responsibility, and underneath it all, the same curiosity that drove humans to explore the unknown. The Guardian's construct had lowered a section of itself to create something resembling a speaking platform. Marcus climbed up, feeling the attention of intelligences that had existed since before Earth's sun was born. "Thank you for coming," he began, falling back on the simple courtesy that had started this entire sequence of events. "I'm honored to speak for my species, though I'm probably not the most qualified person you could have chosen." The first response came from the crystalline being, its harmonic tones somehow translating directly into concepts Marcus could understand. "Qualification is less important than character. The Guardian has shared its observations of your species, focusing particularly on your individual behavior. we would understand why you chose to acknowledge an inactive construct daily for 3 years. Marcus thought carefully before answering. Because it seemed like the right thing to do. Someone built that guardian. Someone intelligent and skilled, and probably long dead. Ignoring their creation felt disrespectful. Even though you received no benefit from this courtesy, the benefit wasn't the point. If we only treat others well when we gain something from it, we're not really being kind at all. The beings conferred among themselves in ways that human senses couldn't fully perceive. Marcus caught glimpses of communication that involved colors beyond the visible spectrum, mathematical concepts that existed in 11 dimensions, and emotional resonances that spoke to experiences spanning geological ages. The liquid metal entity flowed into a new configuration that somehow conveyed skeptical attention. Your species has demonstrated capacity for violence, environmental destruction, and tribalism. How do you reconcile these behaviors with your claims of inherent courtesy? Marcus had known this question was coming. Because we're not perfect doesn't mean we're not worth saving. The fact that humans can choose to be better than their instincts suggests we have the capacity to grow. My daily greetings to the Guardian weren't special because I'm special, they were special because any human could have made the same choice. But most did not. Observed a being that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Only you maintained this interaction. Only I walked that path every morning, Marcus corrected. But when other humans learned about the Guardian, they respected it. Our director chose to leave it undisturbed, even though we could have studied it or tried to salvage it. Our scientists studied it with wonder rather than trying to dissect it. Our security forces protected it rather than treating it as a threat. The evaluation continued for hours. The convergence entities asked about human art, philosophy, scientific methods, and social structures. They inquired about humanity's treatment of less advanced species on Earth, their management of resources, their resolution of conflicts. Some questions Marcus could answer confidently. Others revealed uncomfortable truths about human nature that he couldn't deny or excuse. But throughout the interrogation, Marcus found himself returning to the same central theme. Humans were imperfect, but capable of choosing to be better. They made mistakes but learned from them. They had the capacity for both cruelty and extraordinary kindness, and the ability to consciously choose which aspect of their nature to embrace. As the questioning drew to a close, the Guardian construct suddenly blazed with energy. Every surface came alive, with patterns of light, and a harmonic resonance filled the air. Through his neural link, Marcus felt the ancient intelligence making its own contribution to the evaluation, a complete record of human behavior on Kepler 442b over the past 5 years. The Guardian shared not just Marcus's daily greetings, but countless small acts of human decency that had occurred within its observation range. Miners helping injured colleagues without being asked. Dr. Kim sharing her discoveries freely, rather than hoarding knowledge. Director Walsh making difficult decisions that prioritized her people's welfare over profit margins. Most importantly, the Guardian revealed its own conclusion about humanity. A species capable of maintaining their essential kindness, even in the isolation of space, who chose to treat the unknown with curiosity rather than fear, who could look at an incomprehensible alien artifact and decide that simple courtesy was the appropriate response. The convergence withdrew to deliberate, leaving Marcus alone with the Guardian as the alien sun set over the transformed landscape of Kepler 442b. Through their neural link, he sensed the ancient intelligence's anxiety about the outcome. In all its eons of observation, the Guardian had never become so personally invested in a species' survival. You've done everything you could, Marcus told it. The rest is up to them. The answer came loaded with emotion that felt surprisingly human: hope, fear, and something like love for the small, strange species that had surprised it with their capacity for unconscious kindness. The verdict came at dawn. Marcus stood once again in the familiar spot where he had greeted the Guardian every morning for 3 years. The convergence entities had returned, their alien forms somehow conveying a solemnity that transcended species boundaries. The crystalline being spoke for the group, its harmonic tones carrying the weight of a decision that would shape humanity's future. The convergence has reached consensus. The human species demonstrates sufficient wisdom, and potential for growth to warrant inclusion in the galactic community. You will be welcomed among the older races, with all the opportunities and responsibilities that entails. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. Humanity had passed the test. But the crystalline entity wasn't finished. However, this decision was not unanimous. Some among us believe your species requires further observation before full integration. Therefore, the Guardian construct will accompany your expansion into space, serving as both protector and monitor. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Guardian would be leaving Kepler 442b, abandoning the crater where it had waited for eons to fulfill its purpose. But the ancient intelligence's response through their neural link carried no sadness or regret. Instead, Marcus felt anticipation, excitement, and something like joy. After millions of years of passive observation, the Guardian would finally have the chance to actively guide and protect a species it had come to care about. There is one additional condition, the crystalline being continued. The Guardian has specifically requested that you, Marcus Chen, serve as its primary human liaison. Your daily interactions have created a unique bond that will be essential as our species learn to work together. Marcus looked up at the towering alien construct that had become his friend, understanding finally why the Guardian had chosen to respond to him. It hadn't just been observing his courtesy, it had been preparing for this moment, when humanity would need someone who could communicate across the vast gulf between human and alien consciousness. I accept, Marcus said simply, as the convergent ships departed Kepler 442b, taking with them news that would transform human civilization's understanding of its place in the universe. Marcus stood beside the Guardian and watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and orange. Soon, they would leave this quiet mining world for the vast cosmos beyond, where ancient civilizations waited to welcome humanity into a larger community. But first, Marcus had time for one more conversation with the friend who had changed everything. "Good morning," he said, as he had every day for 3 years. The Guardian's response filled his mind with warmth and affection. For the first time, the ancient intelligence replied in perfect, clearly understood words. "Good morning, Marcus. Thank you for not walking past." In that simple exchange, Marcus understood the true power of conscious kindness, a choice made without expectation of reward, maintained without hope of recognition, had become the foundation for humanity's future among the stars. The alien drone hadn't just done the unthinkable by awakening after eons of dormancy, it had shown that the smallest acts of decency could reshape the destiny of entire civilizations. As they prepared to embark on the greatest adventure in human history, Marcus Chen, former mining engineer turned interstellar diplomat, continued his daily routine. Some habits, he reflected, were too important to break.